Real quick note on modifiers, just to remind you that when you start with a perfect interval, okay, that if it increases by a half step, it becomes augmented. If you, from the perfect interval, you decrease by a half step, it becomes a diminished interval. Now, with major and minor intervals, if it starts out as major and you decrease by a half step, it first becomes a minor interval before it becomes a diminished interval. Same thing if you start with a minor interval and you increase by a half step, it first becomes a major interval before it becomes an augmented interval. So just remember, whenever you're doing any sort of modifier on a particular interval and you want to increase and decrease, make sure that you're aware that it doesn't automatically become augmented or automatically become diminished right away. You just have to make sure that if it's a perfect interval or whether or not it's a major or minor interval. And just as another reminder, the perfect intervals are going to be unisons, fourths, fifths, and octaves, whereas the intervals that are major or minor are seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. Let's take a look at a couple of quick examples. So exactly in this case, so let's create a perfect interval. Let's create a perfect fifth. G to D is a perfect fifth. If we want to decrease this, we want to decrease the top note so that this is a diminished interval. You go down by 1/2 step to create a diminished fifth. Same thing if we're going to make this back again into a perfect interval, we increase by 1/2 step back to D natural. And if we want to make it augmented, we increase by 1/2 step to D sharp to make an augmented fifth. Now, if this were a, let's make it one of the, let's make it a major third. Okay, G to B is a major third. If we want to, this is a major third already. If we want to decrease by a half step, it's not diminished first. It becomes a minor third before it becomes a diminished. If we decrease it by one more half step, we're going to have to use a double flat here. Now this is a diminished third because we've gone past the minor third and now it's a diminished third. Now conversely, let's go back and make it a major third again. We increase by a half step. That becomes an augmented third. But if it had started out as not a major third but as a minor third, when we increase by a half step, it doesn't automatically become augmented. When you increase it by a half step, it becomes major first, then another half step brings it to augmented. So just a quick reminder as to how the modifiers work and the order in which you want to approach them.